Babies, especially those born with some sort of disability, make up part of Sister Marie Simone Pierre's work. It's a task she is forced to abandon in 2005 when her health starts to deteriorate because of Parkinson's, an incurable disease.
I had discomfort walking, standing up, especially when fasting. In 2004-2005, standing up without support was impossible. I had to lean against a wall for support. It was difficult for me. I couldn't drive anymore because my leg would stop working. Parkinson's disease has its moments of rigidity.
In this situation, and when she accepts her disease, the religious sisters in her congregation start to pray to the then recently deceased John Paul II. They ask for Sister Marie Simone Pierre to return to work. The result is surprising.
I took care of some things in my office and tried to organize a bit before I went back to my room. It was somewhere between 9:30 p.m. and 9:45 p.m. To give some context, John Paul II passed away around 9:37 p.m. Upon entering my room, I had a sort of strength in me, something that impelled me to write, when in the afternoon I hadn't wanted to.
It is extraordinary because she hadn't been able to write for years due to Parkinson's. When she can read the Bible verses she writes, she can't believe it. The following day, she wakes up with a special feeling.
I felt a great peace, a great joy. I felt light and the desire to go pray before the Blessed Sacrament. I felt that something wonderful was happening. I was shaken. I was living something extraordinary. I went down to our oratory, which is inside our community house, to pray because I felt a need to thank the Lord.
Little by little, aware that something happened that night, Sister Marie begins to appreciate the effects inside the community's chapel.
I could see very clearly that I had no more pain in my legs. I felt very light, especially this hand, which seemed dead during the illness. My arm remained especially immobile beside my body. In fact, my arm didn't move anymore. As I walked, I noticed my arm returned to swinging while I walked, and so I made it to the chapel. There was a prayer, followed by morning prayer and Mass. During Mass, I was supposed to read the first reading from the podium, and it seemed, that's what they tell me, that I was radiant while reading, and during the Eucharist, I truly felt that I was healed. For me, it was a certainty, and I felt this joy throughout the Eucharistic celebration. For me, it was something wonderful, something extraordinary. At the end of Mass, I was convinced that I had been healed.
The joy in her community is as great as her doctor's surprise upon examining his patient a few days later.
He said, "But what did you do to be in this state? Did you double your dose of dopamine?" I said, "No, doctor, I didn't double it. I stopped taking it altogether." Then he said, "What? Explain this to me." So I explained it to him. John Paul II, the prayers of all the little sisters. He told me, "Wait, I will examine you to see." He examined me. It took a long time. He made me undergo very in-depth tests. In the end, he said to me, "I'm sorry, I can't find any signs." I said to him, "Don't be sorry." So that's more or less what he told me. Then, afterward, he said to me, "You will need to come back to see me to make sure there are no more signs, no more symptoms." He gave me an appointment for 5 months later. That was more than 15 years ago.
Since then, she's returned to working with newborns at the same center she had to leave because of Parkinson's in 2005. Thanks to this miracle, verified by French and Vatican doctors, John Paul II is beatified on May 1st, 2011 in St. Peter's Square. Sister Marie Simone Pierre carries the relics of the saint to whom she prayed for healing. There is one element that everyone who met the Polish Pope remembers. He is a happy person who knows how to enjoy life and has a good sense of humor. One of the key moments in his many encounters with university students comes on Resurrection Sunday in the courtyard of St. Damasus. There they spend time with the Pope, entertaining him with music and live performances. There were family moments not seen by the wider public. Only after his death were these images released to the public. They reflect the Pope's smile and his capacity to connect with young people. The Pope's overwhelming joy is palpable in his encounters with young people. John Paul II launches the very first World Youth Day in 1987 in Buenos Aires. The Pope participates until 2002 in Toronto, Canada. There are moments of joy, but also of prayer and tenderness, like with this young man with Down syndrome in Denver.
Dad, Holy Father, I love God. Thank you.
Throughout his pontificate, he especially cherishes these meetings, which attract multitudes. In Manila, Philippines, in 1995, the final Mass is attended by about 5 million people. It is the most attended papal event in history. One of the most exciting moments took place during World Youth Day in Rome in the year 2000. The Pope is 80 years old by then. He has difficulty moving, but he makes an effort to keep up with the youth.
I was at his side and I saw him. He was enjoying himself despite the physical toll it took on him. However, he was enjoying that synergy, that interaction among the young people. People were moving their arms, singing along to the music. There was one young man who separated from the rest of the crowd and made it past security. He made it all the way to where the Pope was, and this brought the Pope so much joy. It was an incredible moment.
According to Joaquin Navarro Valls, who is his spokesman for over 20 years, contact with youth always re-energizes the Pope, no matter how tired he is.
When we were heading back, and the journey there and back was long, he commented, "It's incredible. I would have stayed there all night." That was more or less his attitude. He had a great ability to ignore himself, especially in the last years of his life, when his physical limitations were more noticeable and evident. This is rarely found in people. You had to worry and remind him, "Holy Father, rest a little." That's because he would ignore himself completely.
There, in that gathering with millions of young people, small miracles also take place. Among those who experience a special grace during that encounter is Joseph Kim, a college student at the time.
I think the most impactful part of that whole experience was the final day, the big Mass at the Tor Vergata, where he said, if you have a vocation to the priesthood or religious life, do not be afraid and be generous. And that really struck me. It almost sounded like he was talking to me. There were 2 million people, young people there, but that really struck a chord with me as I came back to my university life. I still had 2 years left, but that invitation and that call to not be afraid to pursue a vocation stuck with me as a good young college student.
John Paul II's impact on Joseph Kim isn't an isolated event, at least during his time in California.
I think a lot of my peers in seminary, I would even say years before me, as well as years after me, were impacted mainly by his virtues as a person and his ability to connect with people. I think that was influential in our own decision to become priests and a desire to do the same for others, as he had done and been an image of what the church should be.
Padre, Figlio, Spirito Santo, discenda su di voi e con a tuoi rimanga sempre.